Greetings, campers! Welcome to the world according to Yoni. I am your host, Yoni Martin. For those of you who've been here before, I am glad to be back with you. If this is your first time listening or watching the broadcast, thank you for coming, and I do hope after what you hear today, you come back again. I'm going to be flying solo today because, I have a lot to say, and I thought mixing what I'm saying with a guest probably wasn't a great idea today, which I think you'll understand in a few minutes. I will be back, of course, next week or the week after, whatever, depending upon my health, with a really great guest. But in the meantime, I've got some important things I need to get off my chest, and you guys have the benefit of getting to hear it. Before I get to that, however, I usually ask people to subscribe to the podcast or the video podcast at the end of the show. I figured today I'll do it up front. That way maybe a few more of you will do it. So please, if you find what you see or hear today interesting, entertaining. I doubt today's going to be all that entertaining, sorry. Look at some of my past shows if you want real entertainment. Please subscribe to either my YouTube channel or to the show on, one of your favorite podcast networks. Okay, now that I've said all that, I should warn you guys, I'm going to be using cheat sheets today because I had to write all this down. I mean, really, this was not one I could do off the top of my head. So, here we go. Let me make sure I'm recording. Oh, yeah. Goody gumdrops. I think I'm recording. All right. How to get started. When I started writing my personal blog, which you can find on WordPress.com, I started in 2016, and coincidentally, the name of my blog is The World According to Yoni. Go figure. When I started it, I promised myself and my readers that what they would get from me was the unvarnished truth. And since what I was writing was primarily about me and my life, that meant that I had to pretty much speak from the heart and say what I was really feeling and tell you the truth about me and about my life and all the good stuff and the bad stuff and yada, yada, yada. When I started doing this video podcast, I made the same promise. I didn't only make it to myself, I made it to you, the viewers and listeners, because I believed that was important. For me to have any credibility, I had to be as honest as I possibly could. And that doesn't mean you won't disagree with me or I won't disagree with you, but to at least try was really important. So please take the rest of this in the spirit in which I said that. Anyway, as some of you who have read my blog may know, and some of you even who've watched or listened to the podcast may know, I have battled depression most of my life. Unless you've read my blog, however, what you may not know is that my depression started in childhood. Now, for those of you who may have known me for a long time and are going, what? What depression? He's always been funny and fun and upbeat. Yeah, that was the facade I used to protect myself. I hid my depression for a very long time from everyone, including me. And it really wasn't until my brother Seth said to me one time, well, you and I have both battled depression for a long time. And I thought, what is he talking about? I'm not depressed. I'm up. I'm jolly. Woohoo! But you know what? I thought about it for a few seconds, and I realized he was absolutely right. And at the time, I don't know if I truly realized what was going on or why. But anyway, I hit it extremely well. And, I was an extrovert. And in school, I was the class clown. But, oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about the being an actor part. I mean, being an actor is a great way to hide from being yourself. So I did all of that. But the truth is, I can trace all this back to childhood. Maybe it was the illness I was born with, and it was pretty severe, and I was in and out of hospitals for a long time. But I don't know if that's really it. See, what I haven't told most people, except, I guess, for the readers of my blog and those who are very close to me, is I was molested as a child. I was molested by a neighborhood bully. I was 6 years old when it started. And all these years later, what I still don't tell most people is the excuse for molesting me came from the neighborhood bully fuckhead. He came from a family that was incredibly right-wing and incredibly racist, so that his ostensive, boy, this is rough, so you guys are going to have to pardon me. Ostensibly, his excuse was, it was because I was Jewish. Now, I was 6 years old. I didn't know jack shit about being Jewish. I didn't know Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever. I was just me. I was a kid. But I was molested. And unfortunately, the events of the past week in Israel, in Gaza, in the United States, and around the world has brought a lot of that back. I don't know. It's scary. It's depressing. It's so depressing. I've at times over the past few weeks gotten almost to the point I was when I spent 72 hours on a psychiatric ward being supervised on suicide. I was on suicide watch, okay? It was not a good time. And I'm telling you all this as a preface to the following. I want to know why the media and practically everyone else in this country and probably around the world are downplaying the unbelievably overt anti-Semitism currently spreading like a California wildfire throughout this country and across the world. What's happening in this particular country is the oncoming storm of fascism and rise of the American Nazi movement, which, I mean, a lot of us can see it clearly. But what's different this time, and even more frightening, is the fact that this time out, people who call themselves liberals and progressives, especially on American college campuses, are participating in this bullshit. Jewish students in this country fear for their lives on their college campuses, in high schools, walking home from school, everywhere. And it's, I don't know how to describe it. It's an awful, awful feeling. I'm sure there are people of color, Muslims, Latinos in this country, all of whom understand exactly what I'm saying because they feel it on a regular basis. They experience racism and hatred on a regular basis. I have experienced it throughout my life, but not like this. Not like this. I mean, it's kind of gotten to the point where it's insane, especially the stuff on college campuses. Now, I'm going to assume that many of you listening to the broadcast, because you are people who keep up with the news and want to know what's happening in this country and around the world, are aware of the events that occurred earlier this week at the University of Maryland. Not exactly a place you'd expect to see overt anti-Semitism expressed, at least not out loud. But it has reared its ugly head. For those of you who may not know, some sick, twisted fuck wrote Holocaust 2.0 in chalk or paint or whatever it was on a cobblestone path at the University of Maryland. I don't know, maybe the teachers at colleges and universities around this country should try teaching their students a little bit of history, maybe. I don't know. Because all too many of them do not seem to get it. Maybe a few more people should have paid attention to Senator Bernie Sanders when he made an appearance on CN last week to respond to questions about Michigan Representative Rashida Tlaib's comments on what was happening in Israel and Gaza. As Senator Sanders quite correctly pointed out, Representative Tlaib's parents are Palestinian. So, given the current violence being perpetrated against innocent men, women, and children in Gaza, it's kind of easy, at least for me, to understand why she feels as she does. But, as Senator Sanders also pointed out, what's going on is far more complex than most people want to understand. So I'm just going to say this. Hatred of an entire race of people, any people, for any reason, is vile and despicable. And in this particular case, it's especially so without understanding the nuances or history that created and are causing the situation. If you do so, that means you are choosing ignorance. So, for the record, all Jews are not Zionists. And as a matter of fact, all Zionists are not Jews. Most Jews, American and Israeli, and probably those around the world, despise Benjamin Netanyahu. They loathe his fascist policies and racist desire to wipe out innocent Palestinians. I certainly do. As far as I'm concerned, Netanyahu is a Jewish Nazi. Now, for those of you going, how can a Jew be a Nazi? Let me give you one very prominent example. And that would be Herr Twitler's former right-hand man, little Stevie Miller. You know, the bald guy, not to be confused with the great rock singer and artist of the same name. I'm going to use a cheat sheet now because I'm not going to remember all of this, so please forgive me. There has been a nearly 400% increase in anti-Semitic hate crimes since October 7th of this year compared with the same period last year. I'm going to also give you a few facts that are courtesy of historian Deborah Lipstadt. When you hear people talking about Israel being abolished, or that it should be abolished, which, come on, let's face it, that is not a particularly realistic sentiment to begin with. People believe that should happen because they've displaced the native inhabitants, meaning the Palestinians. Well, that same argument then could be made for the U.S., Australia, and many other countries in the world. So my question is, are those of you who are so pure of heart ready to hand this country back to the indigenous peoples who were here tens of thousands of years before the rest of us and who had this country stolen from under them? I really don't think so. And while fascists like Netanyahu may be racist, if Israel itself is a racist nation, how is it that more than 1/2 of Israeli Jews have non-Ashkenazi roots? For those of you who don't know what that means, if you have Ashkenazi roots, you're a European Jew. But more than half of the Jews in Israel they can trace their ancestry to places like Iran, Yemen, Ethiopia. And if you want to consider Israel an apartheid country, funny for any Americans to feel that way without understanding our own racist and apartheid background. But if you feel Israel is an apartheid state, why are so many Israeli Arabs, in the Knesset or on the Israeli Supreme Court or going to Israeli colleges and universities or staffing Israeli hospitals? And for you geniuses on American college campuses and around the world, why is it that when you hear most groups claim victimhood, the default response is to believe them, right? We believe victims. But when a Jew says it, in case you've forgotten the 6 million slaughtered by Hitler, 85 years ago? Not exactly a long time in the history of the world. The default position is to question, to challenge, or to blame the Jews, saying, well, you caused it, you're responsible for it. Or, well, come on, that's not really an example of bigotry. Yeah. All I can say to that is me to my ass. For those who don't get it, though, Hamas is not a Palestinian organization. They're a terrorist organization using the Palestinians as foils and human shields in their desire to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. And Netanyahu, being the hate-mongering fascist crook he is playing right into their hands, much to the chagrin of most Israelis. Netanyahu, who I tend to think of as Israel's version of Donald Trump, with both of them using Hitler's playbook as inspiration, was warned what was coming and chose to ignore it. He is a complete and utter scumbag. You will never hear me argue or disagree with that. But what's happening here on college campuses in this country is pure vitriolic hatred based on complete and utter ignorance. I mean, how would we like it if people around the world held every American responsible for the criminal actions and policies of that bloated bag of faux orange shit who occupied the White House for 4 years? I mean, if this country hopes to survive, this insanity has got to stop, and I mean right now. There is no excuse for the actions of anti-Semitic, or for that matter, anti-Palestinian actions by anyone in this country including students who might want to learn something about the horrors and inhumanities of Hitler's Holocaust, in addition to the one currently being perpetrated by Netanyahu. I don't care if you're on the political right or the political left. If you participate in these acts of hatred and violence, it means you don't give a flying fuck about freedom, democracy, human decency, or the ability to use your brain with any semblance of cognitive intelligence or thought. Before Holocaust 2.0 comes a repeat of the rise of Hitler and the Nazis 2.0. What's happening in this country is a disgrace, which, if allowed to continue, will not only end the, quote, American experiment, it could, and I really don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say this, it could lead to the end of this planet. I don't know what to say beyond that. So, on a slightly lighter note, and in case anyone missed it between 2016 and now, the bloated, bloviating dipshit who spent his time in the White House downing McDonald's cheeseburgers, Big Macs, and working with Putin and other dictators he wants to emulate, while stealing as much as he could from the American people, he doesn't really want to be president. No. This sick, twisted bastard doesn't want to be president. He wants to be dictator-in-chief. And let's all remember, this sack of shit lost the popular vote in 2016. It was only due to that good old racist American institution, the Electoral College, and with a little help from the Kremlin and other crooked Republicans, that he was installed as president. And let's face reality. Because Twitler's ego can't deal with being told he's wrong, let alone a criminal, he's already working on a list of the enemies whom he plans to place behind bars, assuming his fascist friends in Congress around the country and around the world manage to steal yet another election for him. The list of people on his enemies list and who he thinks belong behind bars for what crimes we don't know include Hillary Clinton, who he knows beat him, by the way, and who has proven to be correct in pretty much everything she said about him. It includes Barack Obama, the black guy who, unlike Donnie Dumpster, actually won the presidency twice. And, of course, our current president, Joe Biden, who also beat him fair and square. And thanks to Donnie and his cronies, anti-Semitism in this country has gone through the roof. And please, no one tell me he's got a Jewish son-in-law, his daughter converted, and he has Jewish grandchildren. Because as most of us know, Donald freaking Trump doesn't give a flying fuck about anyone, including his children, his grandchildren, all of whom he'd sell under the bus, or he'd push under the bus. I'm sorry, my brain is not functioning on all cylinders. But he'd do anything to save himself and his kids, the fact that their blood doesn't enter into it. Just ask Mary Trump. Now, the hatred in this country is through the roof, and it's hatred towards people of any color other than lily white, including Latinos, our indigenous brothers and sisters from whom this country, remember, was stolen, Latinos, Muslims, members of the LGBTQ community, and anyone else who doesn't precisely believe in Twitler's brand of fascism, meaning he wants to be idolized like his hero, Adolf Hitler. If you don't fit the Tangerine Turd and his followers' picture of Christo-Aryan purity, they want you behind bars or dead. Period. Then, come on, let's not forget that unmitigated fuck and Christian nationalist just chosen to be Speaker of the House. I refer to Mike Johnson, who now sits only 2 seats away from the presidency. Or the Christian nationalist fucks running the Supreme Court and destroying any semblance of actual justice in this country because their belief in freedom extends only to those who share their views and no one else. The members of the Supreme Court, and I'm referring to those on the right naturally, have no respect whatsoever for truth, justice, or the Constitution that happens to be the basis for what's left of our democracy. So the next time I hear anyone, especially a Democratic politician, telling me how we have to reach across the aisle to the right-wing ideologues and work in a bipartisan manner with them, I am going to take great pleasure in kicking them in their fucking teeth because it's bullshit. These people won't work with us. Why in the hell do we want to work with them? There is no working with them. Speaking of all that, I would like to talk for a moment about democratic messaging because it's a part of all of what's happening. I know that many of you, because I've spoken to a bunch of people who, like me, receive emails and texts on a daily basis asking for contributions for politicians or progressive and democratic organizations. They're asking for contributions that most of us can't afford, especially when you get at least 100 of them a day like I do, and many of you do. I don't know how many of you are millionaires or billionaires and can afford the $10 or even the $3, let alone the $100 or the $500 they're asking for every single day of the year. It's nuts. It's nuts. And it's the way they do it that drives me insane, because they'll mask their request in a survey that you've probably seen 50 times if you've seen it once. You know, take this survey. We don't have your signature, your name on this survey. Are you still a Democrat? Oh, Trump's going to win. The subject lines they use are dire and devastating and meant to provoke the feeling of guilt within you so that you have to give them something. And then you take the survey that you've seen 50 or 100 times and probably taken a few times, but it's the same survey. And the only real point in the survey is to get you to donate. I would personally prefer just an honest, upfront request. Interestingly, ActBlue, which my wife and I donate to every month, which is a hardship for us because we don't have any money. But ActBlue is the first group I have found in years to say, look, if you don't have any money or if you're in financial difficulties, do not donate. We don't want your money. You need to take care of yourselves. But if you can, please donate whatever it is that you are able. ActBlue is the only Democratic progressive organization that has sent me a text saying that. Otherwise, the insanity of how they do it. They're insulting Democrats. Oh, we hear you're not a Democrat anymore. Or is it true you're not a Democrat anymore? Or, are you giving up on us? Folks, I am 68 years old. I have been a Democrat since the day I registered to vote. I was a Democratic activist before I could vote, working on campaigns and walking, knocking on doors and making calls as a high schooler. So this is not a good method to make friends and influence people, let alone win elections. And God knows we have to win elections. You know, on November 8th, we saw a sign of hope around this country, minus, not surprisingly, in Mississippi, which really shouldn't count anyway. But if we don't kick the ever-living shit out of these lunatics next year, this country, as a democracy or whatever we are, is finished. We won't even resemble a democracy. So why is it more Democratic politicians don't seem to understand that and act accordingly? We need to call out every fascistic, racist, homophobic comment made by Rethugla QAnon assholes and those who support them. We need to call out the corporate media and specific personalities in the corporate media who only care about ratings and lining their pockets before it's too late. And we're closing in on too late. In the meantime, I'm actually getting my family ready for the possibility of needing to get the hell out of this country. We are not going to repeat the mistake of those who came before us, who in 1933 and the years right before and right after kept telling themselves that Hitler was an aberration and everything was going to be all right. You know, it was okay to stay in Germany, Austria, Poland, France, yada, 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 only to end up finding themselves packed like sardines into trains and hauled off to concentration camps where they were exterminated like ants at a picnic. Yes, my friends, it can happen here. It is happening here. And the words "never again" mean now. Right now. Not tomorrow, not the day after, but now. In 1961, author Joseph Heller published his great book, Catch-22. In the book, he wrote the following, which I think is well worth hearing. Quote, "It was miraculous. It was almost no trick at all. He saw to turn vice into virtue and slander into truth, impotence into abstinence, arrogance into humility, plunder into philanthropy, thievery into honor, blasphemy into wisdom, brutality into patriotism, and sadism into justice. Anybody could do it. It required no brains at all. It merely required no character." Yeah, I think Mr. Heller hit it right on the nail. Or right on the head of the nail. Like I said, my brain is not functioning to full capacity. Last week also brought us yet another bogus Rethugla QAnon presidential debate. Minus, of course, the frontrunner who was busy posting his temper tantrums on Truth Social, the great businessman's personal social media site, which, at last count, is hemorrhaging money to the tune of, I believe it was $73 million so far. Yeah, and the so-called debate was between a group of clowns who don't stand a chance of getting the nomination unless Goodyear's missing blimp has a massive heart attack, loses his mind so completely even the maggots can't deny it, fat chance, or ends up spending the rest of his sick, pathetic, miserable life behind bars, which, let's face it, is where he belongs. Now, among those featured at the debate, Nikki Haley, is really running to get the vice presidential nomination, which is one reason she won't attack Schittler. She did, however, give us the most entertaining moment of the evening, calling Vivek Ramaswamy scum for bringing up Haley's daughter and her use of TikTok. Big fucking deal. As for the other candidates, well, DeSatan is just another Christo-fascist asshole who gives people the creeps, even those who like him. Whereas Ramaswamy is just another rich asshole spending a fraction of his money in a lost cause for no reason other than to build his already bloated ego. And then there's my former governor, Chris Christie, the so-called mainstream Republican running for president. In my not-so-humble opinion, Christie is a lying sack of shit. Just because he's the only one of the Republican candidates who will actually attack and insult the tangerine turd, people think, oh, he's a righteous Republican. But let's try to remember that in 2016, good old Chris was the first Republican to come out in support of Trump's candidacy. The reason he now hates Trump is due to the fact he never got the cabinet appointment he expected, which is really a no-brainer when you consider he helped put Jared Kushner's crooked father behind bars. But Chris Christie is still the same arrogant, lying bully he always was, trying to say Democrats believe in 9 months of abortions at 9 months, a lie he tells to build himself up with the anti-abortion crowd. The problem is, when any of these candidates lie, and every single one of them does, the corporate media hacks overseeing these debates never call these bastards on the facts. They just let them say whatever they want without questioning its veracity. For example, yes, there actually do happen to be a few states that allow abortions in the 9th month. Only in dire emergencies, like to save the mother's life. That's it. Otherwise, Christie is stating what he knows is a lie because he knows the media won't call him on it. So that's the mess we're in, folks, and I don't have any great answers. All I know is that unfettered hatred based on ignorance or stupidity or racism or hatred has got to stop, because if it doesn't, we are doomed as a race. And when I say race, I mean the human race. Okay. Now that I've gotten all of that off my chest, I want to do something positive. And that is, I'd like to oh boy, I have lost it. I would like to thank Fran Drescher and the other leaders of SAG-AFTRA, as well as my union brothers and sisters who stood strong against the lies and greed of the Hollywood studios and producers in bringing the strike we have been in to its conclusion. Now, I understand that many people who are not in the entertainment industry think, because this is what they were told, it was just a bunch of whining, rich movie and television stars holding out and preventing them from seeing the new films and streaming television shows they were looking forward to. But please understand this. On any given day of the year, the unemployment average for actors in this country stands at around 96%. Most actors struggle to survive, let alone earn enough in their chosen field to, reach the minimum amount needed to receive health care insurance through the union. And the use of AI that the studios have been utilizing more and more made things even worse. The rich actors you read about in magazines and see in films or on your television screens are maybe 0.05% of union membership. The other 99.5% of us just want to work. We want to earn enough to support our families. That's why this strike was so important, and why, as desperate as many of us are, the actors stood strong, because our cause was just. And the same goes for the members of the Writers Guild of America, whose strike ended a few weeks ago. And speaking of AI, there is a terrific, if somewhat terrifying, article in the October issue of Vanity Fair that I urge all of you to read. I mean, I hate to agree with anything an unmitigated schmuck like Elon Musk says, but the government of this and other countries need to start regulating the completely unfettered AI industry. As the Vanity Fair article amply demonstrates, the future of the human race may depend on it. What was once science fiction is quickly becoming science fact. And that's it. That's all I've got. I would really like to thank all of you who have watched and or listened to this show, especially if you've watched through its entirety. If you enjoy, well, given the topics discussed, maybe enjoyed isn't quite the right word. So if you found the show interesting, once again, I ask you to please subscribe to my YouTube channel or subscribe to the show on your favorite podcasting network. Anyway, in the coming weeks, I will be back with terrific guests and great topics, which hopefully won't be as dark as those discussed in today's episode. So thanks to my wife, Tanya, for her work and support of this show and me. And thanks to my executive producer and partner in crime and brother from another mother, Christopher Corman. If you get the chance, by the way, head over to Amazon and please pick up a copy of Chris's book, OMG, It's Harvey Korman's Son, because it's a great read and an uplifting story of the deep bond of love between the brilliant comic actor Harvey Korman and his loving son, Chris. It is a wonderful, wonderful book. And we need uplifting at times like this. So thank you for watching and listening, and I hope you come back and join me again. Take care, and I hope to see, well, I hope you see or hear me soon. Bye-bye.